So we're diving into something making headlines, huh? Mount Spur, way out there in Alaska. 81 miles west of Anchorage, to be exact.
Yeah, it's a pretty imposing peak, over 11,000 feet. Yeah. And it's one of those classic cone-shaped volcanoes, built up over time, layer after layer of lava and ash.
And the scientific reports, well, let's just say they're painting a bit of a fiery picture. Looks like this mountain might be getting ready to blow. So today we're going deep, trying to get a grasp on what's really going on under that Alaskan giant.
Right. And I think one of the most interesting things to consider is how long this has been kind of simmering beneath the surface. I mean, think about it, going all the way back to April of last year, 2024. That's when scientists really started to notice a change, an increase in those small earthquakes under the mountain.
Yeah, so like tiny little tremors, right?
Exactly. Think of it like the ground, making these little cracking sounds as hot magma, which is just molten rock, starts pushing its way up, basically fracturing the rock above it.
Oh, okay. So those were like the early warning signs.
Yeah, you could say that. But then things took a bit of a turn, a more noticeable turn, on March 7th of this year, 2025. That's when we got reports of increased gas emissions coming from the volcano.
No, that sounds a little more serious.
It is. It definitely is. Because you see, when you start seeing more and more gas escaping, both from the summit and from a vent on the side of the volcano, it's a big clue. It tells us that magma is getting closer and closer to the surface. It's like shaking a soda bottle. You shake it up, pressure builds, and eventually that gas just has to find a way out.
So more gas means more pressure, more activity.
Right. And scientists pay close attention to the types and amounts of gases being released, things like sulfur dioxide. That's a gas that can spike, like really spike, when magma is near the surface.
Interesting. So the reports we've been looking at seem to be pointing to one spot in particular, the crater peak side vent. They're saying that's the most likely eruption point. And if that happens, we could be talking ash plumes, maybe even reaching 50,000 feet. I mean, wow. So let's talk about what that would actually mean for people, living in Anchorage or even just in those nearby areas. What kind of impact could something like that have?
An ash plume that high, that's a serious situation.
Yeah.
We're talking about significant ash fall, which, can cause all sorts of problems. Air travel would likely be disrupted. Volcanic ash can really mess up jet engines. And then just, on the ground, ash can blanket everything, affecting roads, visibility, just a real mess. And then, of course, there's the added risk of mudslides or avalanches, those fast-moving flows of debris racing down the sides of the volcano. They can be pretty destructive, although the good news is that the potential paths of those flows don't seem to directly threaten any communities. So that's a small relief.
That is a relief. So right now, as we're talking, the official status is at an advisory level, which basically means keep an eye on it, but don't panic, right? So I'm curious, what are the scientists at the AVO, the Alaska Volcano Observatory, what are they actually seeing? What's got them so concerned? What kind of stuff are they really paying attention to?
Right. So it's not just one thing. It's the combination of signals. We've got the increased seismic activity that we talked about, those earthquakes, right? But also the ground around the volcano is actually swelling. I mean, it's literally inflating like a balloon as magma pushes upward. And then even the snow and ice up near the summit, it's melting faster than normal. And that's from the heat coming from below. So initially, the AVO was saying, well, it could go either way. Maybe things calm down or maybe we get an eruption. But these recent gas emissions, that's changed things a bit. They've definitely shifted the probability towards an eruption.
So that's a little unsettling. And, this isn't Mount Spur's first eruption, right? I mean, there's been talk about what happened back in 1992. That was from the same crater peak vent, wasn't it?
It was. And that eruption from 92, it's a stark reminder of what this volcano can do. Anchorage got hit with significant ash fall back then, enough to shut down their airport for about 20 hours. And the damage, around $2 million. And, while no one died directly because of the eruption, it did bring to light some important health risks, especially the dangers of inhaling volcanic ash. It can be particularly bad for people who already have respiratory problems.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what are the scientists looking at now to try and get a better sense of when this might actually happen? I saw something in the reports about volcanic tremors. What are those all about?
Volcanic tremors, those are fascinating from a predictive standpoint. Basically, they're like a distinct ground vibration, sort of like a constant rumble. And what's interesting is that they're caused by the movement of magma. So back in 1992, they detected those tremors several weeks before Mount Spur erupted. Sort of an early warning sign, right? But here's the thing. The timing isn't always the same. They've got Mount Redoubt, another volcano as an example. And that one had tremors for a much longer period before it finally blew. So tremors are a good indicator, but not a perfect clock.
Not a perfect clock. So would it be fair to say then that the big picture here is that Mount Spur is showing a lot of signs, multiple signs, that it's on the verge of a major eruption, and that the scientists obviously have to keep watching it very, very closely?
Yes, exactly. All those signs we talked about, the earthquakes, the ground swelling up, the ice melting, and now the gas levels increasing, it's all pointing in the same direction. It's telling us that this volcano is getting more and more restless.
Yeah.
And that, an eruption is looking more and more likely. The scientists, they're basically, they're like doctors. They're checking the mountain's vital signs. And those vital signs are saying things are escalating.
So just to wrap things up, to put it all together for everybody listening, the scientific reports are pretty clear. Mount Spur is showing a lot of the key warning signs that suggest an eruption, and probably a big one, is becoming more and more likely. And that could mean a lot of ashfall, along with all the problems that come with that. Even though, as we've been saying, the exact timing, well, that's the big mystery.
That's the big question mark. And that, leads to something else, something for you all to think about. How do communities, especially ones near a volcano like Mount Spur, how do they balance the need to be prepared, to have resources ready and plans in place with the fact that predicting these kinds of natural events, well, it always comes with a certain amount of uncertainty. It's a tough balancing act for sure.
A tough balancing act, no doubt.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that's our deep dive on Mount Spur and what might be coming soon. Thank you so much for joining us.